no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation.
8 minutes after 9. How are you doing? Welcome to the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation. This is the final hour of this show this month. Lydia, please remember, we're closing this show today with Gone Till November. That one we must, because we'll be gone till November. Right? 31st of October, 2024. Are you prepared for November? You should be. One of the things that you should be prepared for with November is the official Study in Ireland Fair that's going to be taking place on the 9th of November at Gallant Mall in Parklands between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. And the organizers are Cradle. City is spelled Cradle.
Craydel.
Very good.
Yes.
And so spelled cradle.com.
Craydel _com.
Very good. Very, very good. If you go onto that website, you should register for the Study in Ireland Fair. Entry is by invitation only. Why should you go for this? Because you'll find you can apply for a university slot on the spot. You can get visa consultation. You'll be helped on the application of visas to go and study in Ireland. You can also get amazing scholarships. From which universities? The top universities in Ireland will all be in Nairobi on that day. University College Cork, Independent College, Dublin City University, Technological University of the Shannon, University of Limerick, University of Galway, Griffith College. All of them will be in Parklands on that day. All you need to do is CRAYDEL _com. Register. And you? Very good. Now, as we had said, today it's all going to be on justice and justice and justice. Our third arm of our justice conversation today is on people who have died, people whose bodies have then ended up in mortuaries, but those bodies have not been claimed by loved ones, or so we are told. And so, because the law says this, at some point, those bodies have got to be disposed of by the government. The question is, but how can you be alive, live through several years, you're in this country, you end up dead and nobody knows who you are?
Oh, nobody's looking for you.
And nobody's looking for you. Up to a point where you actually now are just going to be buried in an unmarked grave.
How?
How does it happen?
Well, we say that all your relatives died, so there's no one to claim you.
Again,
how is that possible?
How is that possible? It's even neighbors would know this person. We haven't seen them for a while, and the investigating agencies would be saying, all right, so maybe this person described them. This is how they look like. That matches with a body that is on our records, that was found in such and such a place. I mean, really. That's why we've brought in our forensic specialist to have this conversation with us. Dr. Marina Kalsi is our guest. Good morning, Dr. Haring.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Karibu. We are going to talk about that. I mean, what the law says, what the challenges are, how is it that we have unidentified bodies, how does the body become unidentified, how should we be able to identify this? I mean, we've got technology now, we've got DNA, we've got all this. Anyway, first, before we do that, City is going to give you a proverb. City goes to an African country every week and brings us 5 proverbs from that week. So this week, this is the 4th proverb from the state of Libya.
Libya.
Okay.
Yes. Libya comprises of 3 regions. One called Tripolitania, Fezzan, and Cyrenaica.
Cyrenaica.
Yes.
Okay.
So Sisi.
So where is Benghazi? Is it in Fezzan?
I'm actually
Tripolitania. I can see Tripoli is in Tripolitania.
Yes, but
where is Benghazi?
I know it's within the country, but in which of these states it belongs to, I cannot tell you. Yes,
Okay.
but maybe someone else can look and tell us where it is that you will find Benghazi.
Sawa.
Walk with sandals until you get good shoes.
Walk with sandals until you get good shoes.
Yes.
Dr. Kelsey, what's your interpretation of this proverb?
Well, I would say it's similar to do not despise the time of small beginnings. I would also say that it shows us that we're getting to good shoes, or hopefully getting to accountable governance, means then that you can wear sandals. But I think since 1963, we have worn sandals for long.
I mean, we are due for shoes.
Yeah, I think so.
Surely.
It's due season.
We're due for our good shoes.
You know what your interpretation does? It tells us that we are accustomed to walking barefooted.
Yeah.
So when we have sandals, we think it's a big thing.
Yes.
And yet there are
We
shoes
think
that
that's
could,
what is the new
yeah,
shoe.
we are good. And yet there are shoes that could be worn. Okay. So
Larry Kraft says, Kelsey, good to see you. You know who Larry Kraft is? Okay, well, they're just happy to see you.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Nice to hear from you.
Okay, what do you do for a living?
Well, I've
Many
done many
things.
things. But basically, I work as a forensic specialist. I've worked in forensic death investigation operations. I've done that for Ministry of Health for 12 years. I then resigned from the Ministry of Health. In between, I've also done work for the International Committee of the Red Cross. I worked in forensic humanitarian actions where there's armed conflict or situations of violence, deaths from the migration crisis. I've done policy work for the International Development Law Organization in Somalia, helping to establish their forensic strategy and framework. Also done research in the forensic space, doing assessments to see what the state of forensic science in a country is. I've worked with the Argentine forensic anthropology team in some of their human rights investigations work in countries like Central African Republic.
So, what's a forensic specialist? What's forensics?
So forensics is essentially an adjective. It comes from the word forum, where you are debating about an issue, and is essentially now applied to a scientific technique. You use a scientific method. You apply it to an investigation, and the outcome of that scientific analysis may then be produced in a courtroom.
And when it comes to death, what role does forensics play?
So forensics in death investigation, forensics helps us to establish the cause, the manner, and the mechanism of a death. Essentially, people will talk about the primary issue being cause of death. And the issue of unidentified bodies, and unclaimed bodies, unidentified persons cases, where the person is believed to be dead, then forensics is not just about the death investigation, but it's about the forensic human identification. So who is that person? Yeah.
So how do you identify a person? So let's say, okay, as you're getting closer into the topic of the day, the police pick up a body. They've been called by a community and told there's a body here. Then the police come and they pick a body and then they take it to a mortuary. So how do you go about identifying who this person is?
Okay, well, maybe. Okay, when the police pick the body, they should not just pick the body. They should call the crime scene people, and then there should be an internal law enforcement procedure for how a body is removed from a scene where the death is questioned. So how do you then identify a body? Well, then either there is a hypothesis, like a presumption. We know who this person is, and this person lives here, and this person died here, so the community and the neighbors, they're like, or the relatives are like, yes, this is my mother. She was living alone in the village, huyu ni yeye. So there's a presumption that the identity of that person is known. There is the case where now a body may be picked up and nobody knows who that person is, or found in a location where people are like, this is a strange happening, and so we don't know who this person is. To move from, where the body has been found to the identity of the person will depend on the state of the body. So is the body, is it a fresh, what we call fresh body? So your flesh, you have your flesh and you just died, it's probably been a couple of hours. Or is the body decomposing already? Is the body, because decomposition is a natural process that the body will undergo, and the body starts to decompose, which means you start to lose visual characterization. So you lose the visual characteristics that a person would be used to when they see you in life. And so visual recognition is prone to error. And then once you have the body that is, so you have a body that's fresh, has a different has varying a different way to identify. And identification is not just one line of evidence. You say the face looks like the person. Governments are responsible for investigating crime through law enforcement, and so it's not sufficient to have one line of evidence. The international best practice is that you would have two lines of evidence. So even if I can see it's you, but I can take fingerprints and cross-check against the fingerprint database in the country if that's available and say, yes, we confirmed that this is so-and-so. So you move from fresh to decomposing. You can end up with fragmented remains, like from a plane crash, burnt beyond recognition, from a bus that caught fire. You can move to a fully skeletonized body. It's found somewhere in like migrants cross the Libyan desert trying to get into Europe through the Mediterranean, and so you find now you have skeletonized remains all through the migratory path. And so if a body is skeletonized, is it wet skeletonized? Like, does it still have some tissue on it, or is it dry skeletonization? So it will depend. Identity, forensic human identification is a scientific process.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a deep one, like you've said. Are there laws that govern this process? For example, in this country called Kenya, right? What laws are in place, or regulations, or just procedures that have been documented that govern this?
So essentially, okay, there are several laws governing death. So, for example, there are sections like Section 385 to 388 of the Criminal Procedure Code that talks about a magistrate's capacity to hold an inquest. There are Anatomy Act laws that a body can be given to an anatomy school for dissection. There are laws such as the Health Act that came about in 2017 that has like 2 articles on postmortem. Now there's the Coroner Service Act, but it's also now being amended.
Already
Even before implementation, yes. So there have been challenges with the deaths, with the management of deaths in the country. And the fragmentation of laws. The National Coroner Service Act came to sort of like consolidate the legislation on death management. And like, for example, what's a reportable death? Can a community come and say, look, this is our, religious belief, and so that supersedes an investigation. It came to consolidate the legislation, but there are several different pieces. Like any law dealing with fingerprints would impact the death legislation. You know, I mean, so it's
So
there are
just
very
too many
many
things.
like even if you have the Borstal Institutions Act, what happens if a juvenile dies in a Borstal institution? What happens if a person dies in police custody or state custody? Let me put it that way. You know, what about the issue of what do you call this? The Evidence Act, where it talks about that a person can only be declared missing essentially after 7 years. You know, the fact that there is no, the Convention on enforced disappearance is not a legal term. Yeah, you know, so, who's an unclaimed body, and what's an unidentified body? So, in my mind as a practitioner, that is, unclaimed is okay. We know who it is, but nobody has come to claim. Okay, that in when I think about my practice,
that's your interpretation.
That's my interpretation. Unidentified means we don't know the identity of this person.
But stop right there. How is it that you do not know the identity of the person and the body is there?
So yes, so now there are two avenues of how forensic human identification is carried out. One, you have the side of a body without an identity, which is what we as forensic specialists would see in mortuaries or as part of our work. So we can have bodies without identities, and now we are in charge of establishing, using the body, the identity of that person, of that person, coming up with an identity, like a biological identity in a sense. Is it a human? Okay.
Number one.
Yes, like you can be brought for bones, and told, okay, hizi mifupa daktari ni za umbwa, ni za mnyama, ni za, so, ni ya binadamu, so you can, so we have to be able to say, yes, it's human, it's adult, or it's a child, these, and so that's on us.
All right.
But is the sex female? So for example, I tell you, like women's pelvis, we do sexing of the skeleton through the pelvis and the skull. Men have, or the male species has a thicker skeleton and a larger cranium, and yes.
So they have big heads.
Men are thick-headed.
I think that's more it. Well, somewhere over here, with the eyebrows, it's really thick. But their pelvis is narrow. Women's and more for locomoting, The women's pelvis is designed for childbirth. So a baby's head cannot fit in a male pelvis, but the female pelvis is designed to accommodate the baby's head. So from the pelvis, we can tell the sex of the skeleton. Using population standards and research that's been carried out, and where it's not been carried out, but for stature. Like, what is the stature of the African skeleton?
What does stature mean here?
Here it would mean height.
Okay.
Yeah. What is that for a Caucasian? So biologically, we may have very offensive terms, right? So we go for Mongoloid, like I would be seen as a Mongoloid, Caucasoid, and a Negroid. So the population standards, the research, has it been carried out for now you to say, okay, this one we are sure, because sometimes in the morgue, you will have morticians come tell you, or mortuary attendants say, daktari huyu ni Sudanese. You understand? Because the person is so tall that, their legs are, beyond the autopsy table. But we know that that's not true. Most Nilotic people are very,
they're lanky.
They are tall, yes. So, so this is how we determine these things.
Identification is starting from there. Starting from human to come into sex, to come into likely race, to come into all those things, it's a process of identification.
Yes.
Up to a point where then you're able to tell, okay, so this is probably Eric.
Yes, like if you had a medical procedure, like let's say Eric has a prosthesis, yeah, on his left side,
Yeah.
on the left leg, and we are told, but and in the morgue we have a body that has a prosthesis.
Okay,
Yeah.
prosthesis is who exactly?
Oh, sorry. It's a medical device, like let's say for the one that you have in case someone is amputated in the leg and they would need to have, I don't want to use the word fake leg, but yes, an artificial leg.
Artificial leg, yes.
So that's what we use. We use the medical history, we use the dental history, we use we fingerprint the body, we will take pictures, we will do x-rays of the body. Actually, a full, what is called a low dose, but a low dose x-ray of a full body or a CT scan. That is the normal standard way on our end in mortuaries, on the death investigation side, where we have the body without identity. That's what we would do.
Okay. So all those things should be happening at the mortuary.
Yes, in any forensic any facility where forensic death investigation is occurring, at this
This
level
should
of
happen.
international standard best practice, that should happen.
Okay. So ideally what we are saying that if that unidentified body has been picked up from wherever it was picked up, crime scene, and the crime scene, whatever has happened on that end, when it comes to the morgue, then the next person that they should call is a forensic specialist such as yourself.
Yes, they
So
should.
you come in here.
Yeah.
So let's even say that this body is still fresh. Which one comes first? Is it flesh or fresh?
Flesh fresh.
Flesh fresh. Okay? So it's a full body that has everything here.
Eric, say that again.
Flesh fresh.
Okay, good.
Akona meno, akona kila kitu. It's here. And it's not decomposing. It's not being decapitated. So full body is here. You should now be called in and now go through the motion of identifying who this person is and how they died, the cause of death.
Yes.
So how can we end up with unidentified bodies?
So now let's talk about so we have, that's one component, bodies without identities inside the mortuary undergoing a post-mortem process of forensic human identification and post-mortem of forensic death investigation process. On the other end, we have the police or the law enforcement officers who are supposed to undertake the criminal investigation side of things. That's another element of this multidisciplinary work. And then there's another side, which is not the side of how does a country deal with the families of missing persons? When you lodge a report of a person is missing, what is the next law enforcement action? Because in countries where I would say these are not blurred or not well understood, an ante-mortem unit is supposed to be within the law enforcement, because it is the state's responsibility to find out, to be able to account for its citizenry. So someone has to follow the investigation and contextual analysis of the disappearance of this person. And that's still an investigation.
What?
And when a state does not have that capacity or has not built that capacity, acknowledged or valued that capacity, then the problem now is you end up with civilians trying to fill that gap. And that's something I noted during, I noted when, when Missing Child Kenya came up. So someone a civilian has to now sit and say, look, last seen like at this time, wearing these clothes, and honestly, I think that is tragic because all these three elements, even and I put the criminal investigation, but the reason I'm separating it is for simplicity of understanding. But there's the bodies without identities in the morgue, but there's identities without bodies. And so when you have identities without bodies, what is state action? So I think that's
And all these things, they are laws that say this. There should be a correlation
they should be.
because this is the people have reported their kin missing,
Yes.
and police have reported finding a body,
Yes.
and morgues are holding a body. Then there should be a way in which we are cross-referencing and saying, let's rule out.
Yeah, that process is called the integration of the reconciliation of information.
Integration of the reconciliation.
Yes, of information, post-mortem, which means after death, and ante-mortem, which means before death. So currently, there is the infrastructure for that is lacking. It only has happened in certain circumstances where we've had disaster. The disaster response towards this issue has been, I would say there's like a woye. I don't know. I'm trying to look for the English word.
That's a good English word.
Yeah. There's like a woye for, we have to do this, right?
Yeah, because we know that there are people who are missing here, the people who've died here, and we've got to identify them. Case in point, for example, the Russia school fire.
Yes.
We know that there are children whose parents are here.
Exactly.
And there were children in this dormitory, and we have bodies.
Yes.
So we go through that process of identification. That Woye is not same standard. For example, it's not same standard being applied in Chakahola.
I had resigned by the time Shakahola happened. So I don't know, but I
So you
think
can speak freely and say, from your observation.
I can. At least what I can say is that from the time I joined Ministry of Health in the Division of Forensic and Pathology Services, which was in June 2007, the infrastructure for this integrated multidisciplinary approach towards human identification had not been established. And so Shakahola would be the first largest skeletonized, I would say the largest forensic anthropology case. But because we don't have a forensic anthropologist in Kenya, yes, because pathologists examine flesh fresh. Forensic odontologists examine teeth, dentition, for changes, for age, for trauma. Anthropologists examine skeletons. So the largest, it was essentially the largest case for forensic anthropology in our country. But I did not see any publicly available information of a forensic anthropologist or even a forensic anthropology team being allowed to come to Kenya or being requested to come to Kenya to handle that. So essentially, we kind of like place a burden on, the chief government pathologist and his team to stretch beyond their technical capacity. They do have the understanding of what is required. But you see, the other thing now I cannot speak for is whether these kind of requests were ever made and whether they were, they were provided or not.
Let's take a break. It's 25 minutes to 10. We are hosting Dr. Marina Kasi. She is a forensic specialist. We are talking about cases of forensic human identification. Many bodies lying in many morgues, being held at Shakahola and all. Have they been identified? What are the challenges? What are the ethical issues around identification of bodies and disposing them? 24 to 10. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Hi, everyone.